Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari, and today we're addressing the giant stack of books I have right here. Over here I have 23 BookBox books that I have received from various book boxes in the last year. I am going to read the first chapter of every single one of these books and then decide, is this even worth keeping? Like, do I even want to read this? And you're gonna come on that adventure with me. Basically, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go off camera now. I'm gonna read the first chapter of every single one of these, and then I'm gonna come back. I may be in a different outfit because I don't know if I'm gonna get through the first chapter of every single one of these in one day. The 23 chapters is almost an entire book by itself, depending on how long some of these chapters are. So I'm gonna read through them, sort them out, and then come back and talk to you about every single one of them, what the synopsis, the plot of them is, of that. English is a struggle today. Talk to you about what the plot is, and if I'm keeping it, and why, or if I'm not keeping it, and why. Okay, I have read a chapter of all of these books, so let's go through them and talk about which ones I'm going to keep, which ones I'm not going to keep. Let's start with the ones I'm not going to keep because it's the smaller pile. Okay, this is it. These are the only ones I'm getting rid of. It's not too bad. First is An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X.R. Pan. This is like a Chinese Romeo and Juliet. I am not keeping it because I am annoyed by the narrator voice from the get-go. They're really awful teenagers and I hate them and I don't want to read about them. Next up is The Duchess by Wendy Holden. This is like a common woman becomes a mistress to a king, I believe, 1928, so gilded mistress thing. I don't like the setup for this, like knowing where this is going and knowing that there's going to be like a lot of infidelity and cheating on her husband who seems like a perfectly nice guy. I'm not interested. Next up is She Wouldn't Change a Thing by Sarah Adlaka. Basically this is like, what is that, 13 going on 30 or whatever, where like an adult woman wakes up in her 17-year-old body. I thought this woman's kids and husband were fucking insufferable from page 1, and I just don't care enough to read about the rest of this. Next up is, you can't even see this, this is Cruel Illusions by Margie Fuston. This is vampires and a circus. Basically the main character is this like unbearably emo teenage girl, and I just can't suffer through her. I'm sure it's justified to be emo when you're going through puberty at 17. I am just old and don't want to read about it. I am gonna keep this one though, and put it like backwards on my shelf because I really like the what is this, the sprayed edges. But I'm never gonna read this book, but I'm gonna use it for decoration. And then the last one I'm getting rid of is Heard It in a Love Song by Tracy Jarvis Graves. The writing isn't bad or anything in all of this, but the plot, at least like from reading this and then reading the first chapter, this seems like everything I hate in books. Like all of the tropes I hate, I see popping up in this, and I don't want to put myself through that. All right, let's start with the ones I am keeping. After All by Heidi McLaughlin. This is actually one that I did in a Try Chapter Tad last year and just forgot that I read it, but I still like it. It reads like a John Grisham, and eventually I'm gonna be in the mood for that. Maybe in February for romance. Next up was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. It's like a little over described, but I'm like interested in where the story goes. Like, this is true crime. I'm not hugely into true crime, and I definitely am not the type to like fetishize like serial killers, but I'm still kind of interested. Next up, I've got Twin Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber. So this is basically twin sisters. One is raised in the royal court. One is raised by witches, and they're kind of like enemies based off of like how they were raised. Like they're warring factions, and I don't know where it's going. It feels very like YA royalty, which I like most of those books. So it could be hit or miss, but I'm interested in where it's going enough to keep it and try it. So next up I've got Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo. This is basically like a woman who is like an heir to powerful magic. Her destiny is to like foretell death and harvest souls. But she's like controlled, like her and her lineage and everybody who's had the power before her are like controlled by this king. That didn't really get into it in the first chapter. But the plot seems interesting and I just want to know more. I want to know where this goes. Next up is Blood Scion by Deborah Falley. I don't know if I said that right or not. Basically, this is a girl who has magic that, like, the existence of her magic basically means she's destined to die, or not destined, like her magic's illegal, and so if people found out she had this magic, they'd kill her. Basically, this isn't the best writing, but I was kind of interested in where the story was going, so I wanted to continue on, and I'm hoping the writing gets better as it goes. Next up is Harrow by Joy Williams. I'm not going to give you a synopsis of this because I have no idea. This is one of the weirdest first chapters I've ever read, and you all know how much I like weird, so we're keeping this one. Next up, I've got The Darkening by Sunya Mara. I don't really know the plot of this, but the world is very interesting. It's basically like a dystopian fantasy world where the city is surrounded by this wall of storm, and if you touch the storm, you're cursed, and like these creatures come out of the wall, out of the storm, and like just kill random people. So I'm not a huge fan of like the main perspective character. Like I didn't really like her actions in the first chapter of the book, but I want to know more about this universe, so we're keeping it. So this one is The Ones We Burn by Rebecca Mix. This is basically like a witch, and she has this like blood magic that drives her to kill. And even though we didn't get to it in the first chapter, apparently she's sent to like marry like a prince of a different kingdom, and the witches are be like, hey, kill him, which makes sense since that's what her magic drives her to do, is to kill people. But there's gonna be conflict. Duh, she's gonna fall in love, it's YA. This one, like, it was so interesting reading the, like, first chapter, like, the plot setup. I was like, I want to know more. Like, what's going on? What is this magic? I like it. Next up is One by One by Ruth Ware. This is, like, people are snowed in at a luxury ski resort, and then murders happen. So, like, a locked door mystery, I think is what this is called. I've heard really bad things about this, but I don't read a lot of mystery, and like I like how the story is written in like a bunch of different format. There's really, really short chapters, which I love short chapters. So I'm interested enough to keep reading it. There was nothing that really put me off in the first chapter. We'll see how it turns out. I've got very low expectations for this one. Next I have Shrill by Lindy West. This is like a short story / short essay compilation about feminism. I like the first story, it was funny, definitely want to continue on. Next up I've got Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. This is like a dystopian and the main character is in a prison. That's pretty much all I know. I didn't actually read the synopsis, but that's what I got from the first chapter. Dystopian, main character is in prison. I like Veronica Roth's writing, and I like this brand of dystopian, so I think I'm gonna like this, and it's pretty short. So next up I've got This Vicious Grace by Emily Theed. Basically the main character amplifies, like her magic is to amplify other people's magic, but her power is so strong that she kills everybody she touches. and she's got to find somebody who could survive it because she's like the one destined to save the kingdom or something like that, like her and her partner. So I'm interested. It sounds fun. One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This young girl has some disease where there's like a dark spirit trapped inside of her head who tells her to do things. And he's kind of evil, but he like protects her, and so she trusts him in like a world that, you know, doesn't really protect young girls with diseases of creepy demons in their head. Anyway, I was really interested from chapter 1. Like, I'm excited to read this. It seems very cool, and the writing's very good. All right, Kristen Hanna's The Four Winds. Now, this one I picked up because it's about the Dust Bowl, and like the Great Depression in Oklahoma, and my grandparents grew up during the Dust Bowl and Great Depression before World War II, and it's just, that's why I picked it up in the first place. And then reading the first chapter, it's like, I want to know how the hell you get from that first chapter to what the plot of this book actually is. So yeah, keeping it, gonna continue on. This is Small Angels by Lauren Owen. It's about a cursed wood, maybe a cursed church. The church is called Small Angels. It's not about like Small Angels, it's about the church called Small Angels. A woman's getting married there, but something sinister, blah, 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 blah. The first chapter had this like annoying cliffhanger that I wasn't a big fan of, but I didn't hate it so much that I don't want to like continue on and see if I can figure out what this cliffhanger is. If it stretches it out and does a bunch of cliffhangers, I hate that, and I'm just gonna DNF it and then Google what the plot twist of this is. Because I can't stand where it's just like cliffhanger, 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 and no answers. This is The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. It's about a half English, half Japanese, yes, Japanese woman. She is a reaper. She's been collecting souls, but her Shinigami, which I guess is a Japanese reaper side, starts coming out. She's having problems controlling the power. The main character in this book is a huge bitch, which is my favorite kind of female main character, so I'm excited to read this because I like her already. All right, and the last two, All the Dangerous Things and A Flicker in the Dark by Stacy Willingham. Now this is very interesting. I like the character in this one but hate the plot, and I like the plot but hate the character. So I decided to keep both of them. I like the writing. I think Stacy Willingham seems to be a very good writer, and so I'm like interested in both of these. But we'll see if I like either one of them. That's everything in that try a chapter attempted unhaul. I am keeping most of them, but I made a tiny little bit of room on my shelf, and I now know what most of these books are about, and hopefully have a little bit more interest in prioritizing and reading them soon. Let me know if any of these books sound really interesting to you and that you would want me to prioritize reading. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.